있구나.
Take off your mask and breathe. Breathe. You're Americans. Breathe. It's all alive. Woo! Take off your mask. We're done.
That's it. Take off that mask. That's the only way it's gonna work. Is if we all unite.
I wish I could do that at Target.
I think there are a lot of people that are frustrated with that little flash mob that took place.
They've been getting a lot of hell from the media. They're being talked about in a bad light, and it's
unfortunate.
Serious propaganda coming through.
Right.
You know.
Well, what I think is interesting is, I think it was just last month or maybe a month and a half ago, Canada came out, I guess it was in Ontario, and we actually showed some of the video of that in one of our previous podcasts, our previous Bookmark podcasts. By the way, welcome to Bookmark.
Oh,
This is our weekly
it kind
podcast.
of dropped in the middle of it, right? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
We're back in the Casa Rock studio after being outside last week.
Yeah, last week we did one over on the river.
Yeah, and we apologize for the sound quality on that. We
Yeah.
thought it was going to be better. We moved away from the nearby
traffic,
bridge that
yeah.
was causing all the noise. We were a good quarter mile away from that, but anyway.
But the flash mob at the Target, the
Yeah.
video that we all just watched, or the portion of the video we watched, the girl was saying, "Take off your mask, take it off," and that's exactly the same people, the same things that were being said in Canada.
Right.
Take off your mask, take off your mask, and at this sort of flash mob protest that was taking place, people were driving by and honking their horns in solidarity,
and
and we're
support,
supporting
Yeah.
in support of the girl yelling, "Take off your mask,
Right.
take off your mask," and yet the girl at Target that was doing this with her flash mob got ridiculed or criticized,
Yeah.
or the press went after her.
Julie, they're selfish.
Yeah.
They're just selfish.
Yeah.
But
Selfish for an apparent virus that has never really been isolated by any scientific method.
well, you can't expect them to, just do that all the time. I mean, scientists are busy, Julie.
Right.
And doctors are busy too, because all the clinics and all the hospitals are so busy with those COVID patients.
Right.
Cue the crickets, please.
Well, so we actually wanted to talk about a few things that we see coming up now that we're a little bit past the 6-month mark, since official lockdowns and official closures of businesses and the Great Reset.
Right. Well, before we get into that, I wanted to mention that there's been some songs coming out. Along the lines, I guess it was along the lines of like the flash mobs and all the protests that are going on.
Oh, right. Sorry about that.
That's okay. No, that's all right. We've got Van Morrison, somebody who I don't really listen to all that much. I used to, I suppose, at one point, but, whatever. But he's come out with some songs, and I'm kind of surprised that it was him, but I'm glad, Anyway, so he came out with a couple of songs. I have not heard them. I've been looking around trying to find them.
Did he come out with a song, or did he just make a public statement?
No, he came out with a song that was anti-COVID lockdown.
Anti-COVID restrictions,
Right.
anti-COVID measures.
And then Ian
Okay.
Brown from Stone Roses just released something. And Julie's been listening to it a lot. She was all excited last night playing it.
Oh my gosh, I could barely sleep. It's such a great song. I love the Stone Roses. They are a great band. I recommend them.
Yeah.
They're out of Manchester, in England, so I recommend them. I don't know what to say,
Yeah.
I really like them.
Well, Manchester has produced a lot of great bands. But yeah, so check it out. Ian Brown, what is it called? The Little
It's
Seed.
called Little Seed, Big Tree.
And I don't know what the Van Morrison songs are called, but
Right.
they're
And Noel
apparently
Gallagher came out.
Right, he came out. I don't think he produced any music.
He didn't produce
though.
anything.
But
He
he
just
came out. Noel Gallagher was from Oasis.
Right.
Always an outspoken individual.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not
Yeah.
surprised at that at all.
Right.
In fact, I found a video scrolling through when we were doing a search on Ian Brown, there was an Ian Brown Noel Gallagher video that I didn't watch, but it looks,
like a collaboration.
Yeah, either they're singing together or they're just talking. I don't know, but
makes total sense.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're glad to see artists, especially the musicians, coming out, starting to do this. A lot of the people that we like, I'm talking to you, AC Newman, have been, on the other side of the aisle for, from where we stand, and they're one of my favorite bands. I won't give them the name. The New Pornographers, one of the worst names in rock and roll history, but
great band.
Great band though.
Hard driving pop band.
Yeah.
But I think what we're gonna see in this age of COVID and in this Great Reset is we're going to see a lot of even the more indie pop, the more popular indie pop, like the Decemberists, the New Pornographers, Sufjan Stevens. We'll probably see, definitely Andrew Bird. Like, we're going to see them doing more music that is maybe critical of the situation, but their lifestyle isn't really going to reflect like a truly powerful anthemic, message for criticism or message for society, like we saw with Ian Brown's song, which is sort of the song of the age. Right. I mean, it really is. It is the song that encapsulates, everything that's truly going on. He talks about the New World Order. You're not going to see Andrew Bird saying that. You're not going to see any of the artists that we follow. You're not going to see, and name anybody that we like. You're not. In fact, the most progressive band out there, Massive Attack, has not challenged the official code of COVID narrative, or even officially challenged the fascism that we're seeing in the age of COVID, the way Ian Brown did. Yeah. He really stuck his neck out there.
And I think that's along the lines of...
And it's really disappointing, because they're like one of my top bands.
Yeah, I agree. I know.
Bands.
Well, and
Massive Attack.
Massive Attack and Andy Bird, but Massive Attack, because they are so politically active.
Super politically active.
And it's along the lines of what our comrades at Winter Oak have been talking about with, fake anarchists who are supporting the state and supporting this fascism that we're experiencing, as opposed to really supporting the roots of where they're coming from. And lifting up one aspect of our philosophy over others in order to justify that, which is really messed up, I think.
Right. So all these powerhouses of critical bands that we follow, we're not despite the fact that we're both kind of middle-aged, we don't follow band I'm gonna be 50 and he's you're 57 or something, and we follow bands that maybe 30 something or 40-year-olds might go to, or even younger.
Yeah, a lot of the times we'd go to shows and our grandchildren were there.
We don't have any kids. We don't have any grandchildren. He's being metaphorical. But so we're really into progressive music that most people our age are still listening to Bruce Springsteen or
I don't know.
I don't even know.
I have nothing to speak to. Pittsburgh is we've talked about that. So
even in San Francisco, most people our age in San Francisco had the worst taste in music. I thought it was really bad in San Francisco. Yeah. And then we moved here, and I was like, oh wow. You're talking 30-year-olds that are still rocking out to the bands that their grandparents listened to. It's really sad.
Yeah. Well, in order to not alienate our audience further.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're into the most progressive,
newest music.
The music is typically diagnosing what's happening in culture to the letter. It's very challenging of the system. It's very excellent music, all different ranges. It doesn't always have to be punk or rock or whatever. We listen to a wide variety of
indie pop or whatever it is.
Wide variety of genre of music, and the genre is always something that is much deeper psychologically than you would find in any music out there. And we're shocked and surprised, well maybe not, that those artists, like Savages. Where's Savages in all this?
I don't
You
know.
know, like they're a French English pop band.
Yeah,
you know,
post-punk.
Post-punk pop band. Where's Nine Inch Nails in all this? So you know what I'm saying? It's like they're not challenging the fascism, you know, and that's what's disappointing. But so that means that in the new normal, we're going to need new bands
Right.
that do challenge the fascism. And Ian Brown of the Stone Roses are out of Manchester. They started in the early 1980s. He wrote the song that will lay the groundwork for that.
I hope so. Yeah, I think
for
it's a good place to start.
for that challenge.
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
So you're right. We spent enough time on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry, but so you know, along the same lines of like, you know, culture. We'll be talking about art in a little while, but right now we wanted to transition, talk about what's going on with like restaurants and cafes, small businesses. A lot of people, like you were talking about it this earlier, how, you know, there's people out there that are bashing the small businesses for the way that they're acting and treating, and you know, we don't necessarily use the small business word here necessarily. I talk a lot about self-employment. But not necessarily, you know, supporting the small businesses, because we've seen what other pundits are talking about and bitching about. And did you want to make a comment about that?
Okay, so it's important to understand what words mean. And the only way that I can really, you know, explain this is by giving the local example that we have. So we have a young woman who is a millennial who runs 2 coffee shops in Pittsburgh. And during the age of COVID, she's been fairly silent on social media, which is pretty odd for a millennial who's running 2 very successful businesses.
And for her in general.
Yeah. Her whole,
or in particular.
you know,
whatever.
she was able to get funding to open up her second coffee shop through like a Facebook live stream. I mean, she is very much
That's
about
true.
marketing. She knows how to market on social media. She is a millennial. That is what they do. That's fine. But she's been kind of quiet regarding the code in the age of COVID, which has
Right.
been really odd. So what's happening? So she came out recently, the other day, after 6 months of being fairly quiet. She came out and said, I'm going to be closing down my first one temporarily, my first coffee shop temporarily, to rehab it. It's long overdue for a facelift. It's, you know, she also does live shows, or she used to. She did live shows. She said, this coffee shop has been battered for the last 5 years. It really needs an upgrade. So most people on the face of that will look at that message, and it was a very short message. Most people will look at that and go, good for her. Sounds like she's doing good. How super exciting. She's going to redo her first coffee shop. It's going to have new tables, and we're all going to be able to go in and have coffee and maybe see some shows and maybe see some stand-up performances again. And it's going to be just like it was before, except even better, because she's going to upgrade it. So that's what you think when you hear the message.
It's even what I was thinking, I have to admit.
Right. And
Right.
I was like, well, hold on there a minute.
Yeah.
We're in the age of COVID now.
Right,
We're
exactly.
in the Great Reset. Yeah. So when somebody talks to you, you know, about their business, when they talk to you about, you know, things, you have to be able to listen with your COVID ears now. So what happened with her is she, without a doubt, accepted a loan with one of these predatory little loan agencies.
Yeah, these COVID loans.
These COVID loans. I call them COVID bucks or COVID loans. And with the COVID loan, let's use her coffee shops as an example. Her coffee shop had to go through all of the proper protocol in order to qualify for the COVID loan. So this so-called upgrade of her first coffee shop is most likely going to be completely changed and totally done in a new a COVID Great Reset world that we're all living now.
COVID friendly.
COVID friendly.
Right.
So that means that your experience of walking into the door, plopping yourself down on a comfy chair, and opening up your laptop or looking at your phone and drinking an awesome $8 latte. She does have very good coffee. I'm not gonna lie. It's really good. Mostly what that's probably going to be, that upgrade that she's talking about, is that there will be no interaction with the customer and the barista. It will probably be like what you see when you go into a Starbucks, where the tables and the chairs will be removed, and there will be little placards on the floor to tell you where to stand. You'll probably have to, but most importantly, I think what we really want to focus on is that her renovation and her redoing her first coffee shop is probably going to be more like what you see with some of these like boba tea places, like we see in Pittsburgh.
So in Pittsburgh, in the University District, known as Oakland, we saw it was a boba tea place, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was. They had a QR code out in the front. Now for those of you who don't know, that's the code that you see. It looks like a box, and it's got like the little like shapes around, coming out in 4 places, and so it's the Q stands for quad something or other. Yeah, so QR code. That you hold your phone up to, and you get it. You get the information. Basically, you get the menu up, and you choose what you want, send it, pay, and they bring it out to you. So you don't go into the shop at all anymore.
Right.
Okay.
So I have a feeling that this upgrade that she's talking about, this remodeling and this redoing of her coffee shop, is going to be much more streamlined and COVID approved, where you barely have any interaction and you don't really have that coffee shop experience that you think you're going to have. Mm-hmm. There will be no tables to sit at. There will be no shows to see. It will strictly be you swiping your app over her little barcode, looking up her menu, going, "Ooh, I think I want one of those." Clicking that, and then using your Apple Pay or your debit card or whatever it is that you have.
Whatever digital wallet.
And then she will text you when it's ready. Mm-hmm. And that's how things are working now. That's how things are working all over the place. Right. They text you when it's ready.
You go and pick it up at the window.
You pick it up at the window with no interaction, with very little interaction with a human being. That's why we call the Great Reset and all of this digital interaction that you have with your apps and your phones and going onto the blockchain so they can track how many coffees or how many boba teas or ice creams or whatever it is that you order. They can track it and put it on a digital platform so that they can sell you more stuff and track your biodata that way. Through, you've been drinking way too many sugary coffees this week. I think you're going to be cut off, that kind of thing, Yeah. So all of this is what we like to call anti-life, because life is really about getting together with human beings. Mm-hmm. Life is, if you're pro-life.
Or life positive.
Life positive.
How about that?
Right. So you are... Your ideal situation, when you think of a coffee shop, your ideal experience is to walk in, check the board to see what you want to drink, find a really cool table for you and your friends to sit at. Sometimes the barista will call you and tell you when your coffee's ready, and you can just go up and get it and bring it back. Or sometimes they bring it to your table. But your experience is that you're at the table, you're talking, you're sharing ideas, you're having a life experience where you never know what will be accomplished in that meeting. That's life. That's what some of the best things in life have been created just through sitting at a coffee table and
breeze
at a coffee shop and just talking.
Yeah.
So people say, but I don't want this anti-life experience anymore. I want that first experience that you talked about, where you get to sit down and look people in the face without having to wear a mask, and that you don't have to follow all these dumb rules, and I want it the old way. Well, you can still have that, but you just can't have it out there in the world. You're going to have it at your kitchen table. Maybe buy an espresso machine and have your friends come over, put on some good music on your record player.
Yeah.
And have it, and open up your own house as like a new coffee shop.
Right.
Get a cappuccino maker, you know, and start doing it that way. You're just gonna have to recreate these life experiences. These, what did you call them?
Life positive.
Life positive experiences, and get away from the anti-life stuff.
Yeah.
One more thing, and then you can continue.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
The next thing I want to say regarding this whole scenario is, you know, some locals here might hear me say this and go, "How dare you want to not go and help our local small business, this coffee shop that is just trying to do the right thing, and how dare you not want to go give her money?" Well, she doesn't need my money. She's probably never needed my money for at least 6 months. The COVID loan puts her in a place where she will have enough money to do whatever she wants. She can open up a third shop. She can order all sorts of things for her coffee shop. She can do all sorts of things. She can create a whole online presence and sell goods. You know, she already sells her freshly roasted coffee beans all over the Pittsburgh area.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't need your business. She doesn't need you. She doesn't anymore. That's the whole point of these COVID loans, is that they have made the consumer irrelevant. You're no longer irrelevant. If you were relevant and your customer experience and your consumer experience still mattered, then they would listen to you when you say, "But I really feel that we should have maybe dedicated hours for people to sit together at a table. Maybe we could have one day a week where, you know, those dedicated times for people to get together and sit at a table. We promise we'll spend a minimum of $50. You know, you could work out other arrangements. You could work out other options and opportunities for people to do that. But see, you're living in a pre-COVID mindset when you think that way. You know, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. If 5 of us show up at a coffee shop and you close down the coffee shop just for us 5, we will give you an extra $50 to have a private, you know, coffee shop event, and we promise to spend another $50 in goods and foods and goods.
Doesn't matter.
You can't do that because her loan dictates how she operates her business.
Right. And along those lines, 2 points that we were talking about earlier. One is that, you know, along with these loans, you're going to have special services, what did we call them? Special service providers that provide the COVID services, right? So that they are branded and they are certified, so that they are, you know, COVID approved, COVID friendly approved services. And so now you are getting an experience at these places. So like one of the things that I was thinking about was we looked up one of our favorite restaurants in Pittsburgh, which is attached to a hotel. And we were reading about what you're gonna have to deal with if you wanna go there. And we both thought, ugh, that's just icky.
Right. It's
and it involves, you know, you go in, they take your temperature,
they give you a
mask,
special mask.
You walk to the table with the person who normally would just say, go sit over there or whatever, or the hostess basically, or host. And then you sit at your table, and then once you get your water, you can take off your mask, I guess, or something like that. Oh, and then, you know, then hand sanitizers, all the things, and they're all branded and they're all certified, okay? Mm-hmm. And the experience now has changed from a human experience, like what Julie was talking to a COVID experience, right? To where, you know, you gotta be safe, okay? We need to make sure that everyone is safe. And so along those lines, we were talking about, well, it doesn't matter if, you know, you want to have that pre-COVID experience and like open up an underground cafe and like, you know, fuck the system. We're going to go to this abandoned building and open our own thing up. Well, it's not going to matter, because we're living in an environment now where people are so freaking scared of their own shadow that they won't come to your underground cafe, because unless, of course, you know, you get the word out there and people show up. But as it stands, you could be open all you want and say I'm mask free, and if you're operating in an area where everybody is just masked up, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. Now,
not.
we were outside of our county last week with Kevin, who you saw in our last bookmark, and there were a lot of people who were not masked up. In fact, the businesses and everything, they weren't masked up. But as you got into areas where there were more population, more people, then you saw more of this, and it's pretty weird. So the point is that we're living in a world now where people are they're so freaked out by the propaganda that's coming at them from the news media and from advertising and from other platforms, that they're just not willing to step outside that little bubble of security.
Right.
So it's frustrating.
The special service platforms,
right,
which are these services that
let's go back to that.
That give you your COVID approval. So you've got, for instance, the coffee shop that I was giving you the example of, will probably have she probably has some kind of sticker in her window that says, Cafe COVID approved.
Yeah.
It's a name.
It's
and
branded.
It's
okay.
a brand.
Right.
It's just like when you are going to a 5-star, a Michelin-rated 5-star restaurant. You know that if a restaurant is Michelin-rated 5-star, that it's a really good restaurant. That is actually, having come from Le Cordon Bleu and all this, that is actually just, it's nothing more than branding.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing more than an excuse to create a job that doesn't even need to exist.
Right.
Yeah,
so these services, these special service providers, come out of the investments that are made in the COVID or the whatever the issue might be. So COVID bonds were issued by investors, okay? And these investments were paid into by, say, cities or states or countries or whatever. In this case, paid into probably by the state of Pennsylvania, or the United States had that big budget that went out there, and so that went out into these to pay into these investment products and these COVID bonds. And what happens then is the investors put in money into this bond. They get money back from the government, and then they in turn find approved service providers or vendors or whatever the case may be, and they have to go through certain protocols in order to meet the standards of what this COVID bond entails. And they create a product, which is a service that is so-called certified, it's branded, and it meets all the requirements of that bond and its initiatives and all the things that are wrapped around that, right? So now the government has paid the investors have created service providers, the service providers have created a product that then they sell to restaurants, cafes, or small businesses and say, our new service gives you A to Z, soup to nuts experience so that you can tell your customers that they are safe when they come to your establishment.
Right.
Okay.
And what did you say that it really was? It's the mob. Right?
It's like the mob.
It's the mob.
It's like the mob.
Basically what it is.
It's like, wow.
So we have this crisis, this fabricated crisis. So this poor millennial who wants to keep her 2 coffee shops afloat is like, suddenly all these dumbass rules, which aren't even law, mean that people can't come in and buy my stuff anymore. What am I going to do? Next thing you know, the mob comes a knocking and says, we'll keep you open, and if you don't take the money, well, it's a shame if something happens.
That's a nice window you have in front of you.
That's a nice window you got there. Because we do have an example of another millennial in the neighborhood who did not take COVID loan and was just closed up. He's like, nope, I'm not going to do it. He just closed up.
Yeah, because he told us outright that he wasn't going to take any more of those loans.
Right.
To stay in
those
business.
predatory loans.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You don't need to do that. And the thing is that, it's kind of a weird thing because, you know, the whole thing about, you know, masking and social distancing and all that stupid stuff and, you know, spraying down the chemicals to clean the place, whatever. None of that's law. So you could have potentially stayed open and just counted on your community to hold you afloat. If nothing had changed with the coffee shop, I'd be there every day.
Yeah.
I'd be there every day, spending, you know, $5 a day every day.
Especially if they didn't have a mask rule, right?
to keep her afloat. But because she took the COVID loan and has to have, you know, all these dumb rules, which are a violation of, you know, constitutional and all sorts of civil rights protections, I can't go. I can't do it.
Yeah.
So, and she doesn't need my money anyway because she has her COVID loan.
Now, you know, I was going to speak to that too because I mean these loans only get you so far. And they get you so far as to get you to the next point where it's like, well, you need another loan. And so these things start stacking up and and that's how they're designed. They're meant to be that way. Because even if she had great business, she still would be able to really pay off those loans. They're made and they're created.
Oh, she'll never be able to
these
pay off the
packages
loans.
you know. The other thing I want to mention is that, you know, we're speculating about like what she's going to do with her other coffee or cafe. This is based on what we know about other things, so we don't know what she's actually going to do. We were just like talking about it, and it's
who
like,
knows?
Well,
Maybe
that's probably what's going to happen. You know, now if she goes and opens it up and has tables in there and no mask laws, I'll be a very happy person.
We'll be happy to go
but,
there.
you know, I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is what you said. It's going to be a Starbucks experience,
a very anti-life experience. Yeah.
And you know, the other thing with all the loans and them stacking up and building, it's like, well, if you have to default or whatever, then, you know, they basically have your store and your livelihood, and they can just take that and turn it into a Starbucks. Right.
They'll just
or whatever.
Swallow it up and pound it into something that they want.
Yeah.
It's really sad. If she had not taken the loans, she probably would have done better. You know, it kind of makes me think of that Christmas movie that everybody loves with Jimmy Stewart and the angel.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life when everybody, when the whole town comes together with the big basket of money and says everything's going to be okay because the whole town has come together to help you. You know, that's how it should be during this whole Great Reset and during this whole entrance into and toss into fascism. That's how it should be. Is people should not be taking COVID loans to keep their businesses afloat. Is what they should be doing is saying, fuck the mask rules, fuck fascism, come in and support my small business, and I bet you she would have lines around the block.
But you know, the thing is again, just like we were talking about with the bands and the and all these other people, they really believe.
Oh, they believe it. I forget about that. That people actually believe the lie.
And that's something that's something that's really hard for us.
Yeah.
Because we
clearly
live in our own bubble here. Maskless world of of anti-COVID rhetoric and.
I mean, you know, we don't go anywhere, so we.
And yet, you know,
we don't know.
I have a part-time job that I have to go to, and everybody there is just all paranoid. They think this is real, and they think it's actually going to go away at some point, and that's a sad thing.
I mean, the people though, they're quite stupid. So I mean, I don't know.
No, it's not that they're stupid. It's they're being propagandized to. There's some smart people out there who really believe this bullshit, and I'm, and it's really sad because even on like Facebook or social media, it's like these platforms where you used to have intelligent conversations with these people, and now you're like, okay, what happened to that person that I was talking to 6 months ago? They're gone, and now I'm talking to this pod person.
Yeah.
And
it's I know, and the scream.
Right?
Well, that actually literally
I know that happened to Julie last week.
Happened to me. I got the Donald Sutherland point with the mouth open and the eye and the crazy eyes and the pointing. It happened to me when I opened up the car door of a cab. And I didn't even gesture. I didn't do anything to try to get in. I kind of wanted to wait for the taxi driver to say something to me. I don't just open doors and get into cars without the driver saying something to me first, whether it's a COVID world or not. I mean, I'm respectful of making sure that, because if he's like, oh, are you Hank? I'm like, no, I'm not Hank. Then he would not pick me up. I want to make sure I had the right cab, right? So he's like, are you Julie? And I was like, yes. And he's like, you have to wear a mask. And his eyes went crazy. And I was like, well, I have a medical exemption.
Julie stepped away. I mean, I was like silent.
And I was scared because he looked like an alien.
And I stepped in and I said, she has a medical exemption. And he just like reached over and shut the door and drove away.
Yeah, he peeled off. Like, so we're dealing with some serious we're collapse. Like America, it's over. Like I don't know how else to say.
And it was just
over.
bad, So and we were stuck in a place that was too far to walk.
Oh, much too far to walk. Yeah.
And the buses
had stopped running.
The buses had stopped running from downtown to where we live.
You just take a cab. I mean, it's what we do.
Right,
like I don't even know what the problem is, but anyway.
Right. So it was bad scene. Fortunately, and of course, we found a way home. But,
we did. We found another cab company that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Normal.
Right? Yeah. So.
So I think that.
So we've got a lot of just people that are scared, and they're scared of something that they've been programmed to be scared of, and that's scary to me.
Yeah. So I'm not so much like people. There's a lot of reactionaries out there that talk about FEMA camps and all this crazy stuff. I'm not really
I'm not so concerned about
scared about I don't think that there's going to be food shortages. There may be rolling blackouts and rolling electricity shortages and all that kind of stuff. There may be,
but
whatever.
Normal in this place.
I mean, we live in a neighborhood of deep poverty, so we're used to that.
Yeah.
But what I'm really truly scared of are the snitches, and I know that it's not on our list, but I think it's something that we should address because somebody that we do follow mentioned that she went to the store with her husband, and for the first time in this entire age of COVID, the Great Reset, in the store that she frequents in her neighborhood, somebody said to her something about a mask, and she was really surprised because she's gone in there many, many times and they've never questioned her. And the only reason that they questioned her was because somebody snitched, because somebody actually complained and went to the manager. And so that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of the snitchers. I'm afraid of the people that are there. This is where you start getting into the McCarthy era type of
well.
And
a lot of people want to go to the communism thing and the whole Mao Red Army Guard and and there was all that in that authoritarian totalitarian form of government and in a society, but you also found that in Mussolini's fascist Italy, where they use some of the same language, like safety of the community or safety for everybody or something like that,
Mussolini,
along those same lines. I was just reading an article actually, just right before we started, and of all things, the National Review, which is it just came up, and I was like, well, this fits with what I'm researching. So I was reading, and it was pretty fascinating. They were talking about corporatism, which links to what we were talking about with our video communitarianism. And this idea that it's like the individual and individual rights go away at the cost of the the collective, and or the common good, like what we talk about, or the corporatists, right? So and it's all linked. The folks in Davos are definitely of that ilk, and the editors or the editorial position at the National Review is they're anti-Davos too, because they're traditional capitalists, right? They're old school capitalists.
So I'm not so much afraid of all this other stuff. I'm more afraid of the snitchers.
The snitchery.
I'm more afraid of the McCarthyism that I see that's coming up.
Yeah. I guess that's how we got into the fascism and everything, right? So the Stasi state, where people were paid or rewarded for reporting on their neighbors.
Right. So that's what I'm more concerned about than, FEMA camps and guards, going up and down my street and tanks or whatever. That's not going to happen.
What's going to happen is our services and ability to exist in the world are going to be removed from you as your privilege.
Right.
You will have privileges removed. Rights will turn into privileges, and privileges will then be removed.
Right.
And this
and
is,
so they're training us all of that
Right,
through,
right.
Anti-life experiences, like forcing your children to, in these deplorably depressing conditions at school. So training the children and indoctrinating them into accepting, basically being treated like prisoners, and which is why your consumer experience is now changed from being where the customer is always right to the customer doesn't matter.
Right.
You
Right.
really don't matter.
Right.
We said this in a previous podcast.
Yeah,
but you
one of our
really
other
don't.
bookmarks, yeah.
You really don't
2
matter.
weeks
Not
ago.
to the big businesses or the small businesses.
No.
You don't matter.
Right.
You're going to have to create, if you want to sit down with your friends and have a nice dinner and really have a wonderful life-affirming experience where you don't have to wear a mask and you can sit at a table and you can share a bottle of wine and you can laugh and have coffee and dessert and a great dinner, it's going to have to be at your house.
Right. And we're gonna.
That's just going to have to be at your house.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because before COVID, there's musicians that we follow that would do tours that were basically living room tours. So they'd set up these shows ahead of time in people's living rooms.
Yep.
So they'd book them in advance, and the people who were hosting the show would sell the tickets for 20 people would come and see. And so I think that model is something that can be looked at in the future for those of us who are not putting up with that crap where you've got to mask up and
you don't
go,
need to be a part of it.
because right now music venues are closed and they will eventually reopen, and they're going to open with those special service providers that are geared towards the music industry,
Right.
So
oh my God, it's going to be like this. So the Warfield is a very popular venue in San Francisco, or the Roxanne here in Pittsburgh, which just opened up. It's gleaming brand
it was
new.
open 9 months and and COVID.
Yeah, it took them 9 years to renovate the thing and $9 million or some crazy amount of money.
10 years, $9 million and open
and
9
then
months.
was only open for 9 months. Unbelievably tragic. I mean, this is like the worst story ever.
Yeah.
So all of these venues are going to reopen. They're going to have limited, tickets that they'll sell to people, which you have to buy in advance, of course. And they're going to have the little placard in the window that says approved by the, venue approved COVID service, whatever that special service is. And there are a dime a dozen.
COVID Rockin'.
Right, it's probably going to be called COVID Rocks or something like that. So that you know that as a customer or a consumer, that you're going to see you're going to be experiencing a band in a COVID approved environment. So they'll have each and every one of your where you sit, your dedicated seat or dedicated space will only allow 2 to 4 people in the space, and then the next space will be 6 feet apart. So there will be way less people at shows. You'll probably only be allowed to have a certain amount of people standing in line to get their beer or their drinks at the bar. No more smashing and standing up, having to wedge yourself in between human beings to try to reach for your drink at the bar, which is an experience that we have had for decades. It's the club experience.
Right. Now there's a lot of people out there that are going, yay!
Yeah, a lot of people might like that.
We like that. We like the crowd.
So it's gonna and then chances are you'll have an opportunity to buy a COVID approved mask that will maybe have the venue's logo emblazoned across it, like the Warfield or the Roxanne. Any way to make a buck, right? So this is all about. It's really anti-life.
It's
anti-life. I can't imagine.
And it's a capitalist overreach of creating a market that didn't need to exist in the first place.
Right.
And turning it into some new way of making money based on a scarcity. Once again, which we've talked about before too.
The key point being that it didn't need to be in the first place.
Right.
We don't need any of this.
Right. But capital out there in the market was all going up to the top, and it's all being collected and kept, at the top by the billionaire ruling class. And so less and less of it was in circulation, and so they had to come up with new ways to financialize the population in order to keep that cash flow going. Right? Because they've got, they're going to keep their money, but they still need to start, they still need to keep things running if they're going to make more money, right? So the only way they can do that is to create these situations in which we have to come up with more money, and we have to come up with new, we have to put up with these new rules, guidelines, and regulations in order to allow them to make more money from us, right? And so speaking of pulling and collecting and hoarding, I should really say.
Yeah, it is a big
money.
word, yeah.
Along with that, culture goes along with that. So we've been talking about music and cafes and restaurants and all that. Life experiences. Now, we're going to transition into the art world, where we saw a story that you posted, or I posted on my Facebook page, about the Brooklyn Museum deaccessioning some of its paintings. Now, what that means is they are removing them from their collection, and the removal means sale. So they're going to sell their work. They're going to deaccession their work in order to sell it at auction in order to raise money to pay for its operations. And this is a practice that has been frowned upon by the museum associations for decades, because that's not what you do with your collections. You have collections for a reason. The collections are there to be available to the public. Now, the Brooklyn Museum is in a bad way, and it has been for a long time. On the other hand, it's very rich in collections. There are the things that they're actually deaccessioning are things that have never seen the light of day.
Right.
And that's a shame. It really is.
We'll never see them.
They'll never see them now.
Never.
But part of the other reason for museums is not just for, making things available, but also the interpretation that goes along with that. So they give you a context, they give you a story associated and historical perspective associated with that piece of art, how it fit into the culture at its given time, and things like that. They also give you some sort of idea of the provenance. Now, provenance is important here because a museum that has works of art that have been in their collection for a long time, and especially ones that have been seen, put out into the public, they are well cataloged, they're well established as valid and authentic pieces of art. Okay, they're not copies. This happens now and then that they'll find a copy or some sort of forgery in their collections. But for the most part, the museums do a good job on figuring out whether these are forgeries or not and presenting them as such. So the provenance is like the chain of ownership. Okay, so who owned these things before? These things are very important to collectors, and the people who are now going to be collecting these works at auction are the very same wealthy people, not the same exact individuals, but the same class of people who donated these works of art into the museums in the first place, or started their own museums from their own collections in order to make them available to the public. Like the Carnegies, Gettys, and people like that. And so this what we're seeing is again a grab, a hoarding of things and objects that are going to be going from the public into the private sector once again. And I wanted to give the example of the Warhol, which is part of the Carnegie Museum group. I mean, there's a group of museums here in Pittsburgh that are all called the Carnegie Museums. There's a science museum, there's an art museum. The Warhol is dedicated to contemporary art and then the works of Andy Warhol, because he comes from Pittsburgh. There's another science. There's a science museum too. So there's all these so natural history, science, art, Warhol, and I think there's fifth one. And so we were reading about the Warhol, and it's open again.
Yeah, it is.
And
It's
but you know, you go there and like other things, you have to buy a ticket in advance, which okay.
You're only allowed a certain amount of
But then you're only
time.
They time you.
They
You're only
time
allowed
you.
to be in there for a certain period of time, which is what used to happen with like Blockbuster shows that we'd go see. But they wouldn't time you. They would just have a specific time that you could come in, and then you'd go through the show.
You don't mean. I know what you mean.
Blockbuster art shows.
The
were
Blockbuster art shows,
like,
not Blockbuster video.
No, not Blockbuster video. Blockbuster art shows were
Consider
shows
our
that were like,
audience.
that would be like, you know, the French Impressionists from, you know, 1879 to, you know, whatever. And it would be like popular artworks, right, that people would go to see, and they would have to, because they were so popular, they brought them about because they made money for the museum. But
You would have to go in at a specific time.
Right, they were popular, so not everybody could go at the same time, because then it would be impossible, right? So you'd have timed blocks of time that you could go in.
Right.
So now they're doing that with normal visits.
Normal.
So you have a specific time that you have to show up and go in, and you can only be in there for X amount of time, like say an hour or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Which isn't really, like, the museum experience should be more about...
Fluid than that, right?
It should be very fluid.
Yeah. And you know, of course, you've got to wear the proverbial mask.
That says the Warhol
probably,
on it.
You know.
And then there's, like, a couch there, and they have little stickers on the couch where you can sit.
Right.
You know.
Oh, really? In the cafe area?
Well, or wherever.
Or just in general?
Yeah.
Oh, because, in museums, they generally will have places where you can sit and ponder. And so now you have to ponder COVID style.
It's not a very pleasant experience.
No, it wouldn't be.
But, you know, all of that, you can avoid all of that nonsense. Just go online and look at everything.
Well, now... Okay, so a couple other things.
Which is sad,
so these special service providers once again show up, and now these are being used for their specific industry, right? So the museum industry, and like we were also talking about, like, you know, zoos and aquariums and conservation, or conservatories,
like the conservatory of flowers,
right? And so these kinds of places are going to be reserved for those who can afford them. Okay, and also, you know, the same thing applies where you only can go there at a certain time, you know, the time that you're assigned, and you can only stay there for a certain amount of time. You have to be masked up and all this bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And you know, once again, the experience is determined by the special service provider. You know, once again, branded and certified for that experience, right? And so you've got this simultaneous limited ability to go see the work or go see the cultural artifacts in this place, and at the same time, then these institutions, these places are being sucked dry of their cultural things, right? There, you know, certain things are going away that they want to go back in. So they want to basically start taking things from the public domain and putting them back into the private domain. At the same time, limiting your ability to go in and see these things.
Right.
And it's very disheartening, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, it's a little sickening. Well, it's even more inspiration and more reason to start thinking about, you know, creating new works of art. You know, this is an opportunity to become another Renaissance age.
Right, and see, that's something else too. Okay, so two other points. One is along the lines of what you were saying, but I want to come back to that. The other thing about the institutions now, the museums and the aquariums and the zoos and all these things, right? They're also there, they're keeping them there so that what they are is they are experiences for students to go to earn their badges, right? The badges that they get in their pursuit of their education.
It's important for people to know that kids these days in school, especially primary school, so we're talking kindergarten up to 12th grade, I guess, they don't earn grades anymore. They earn badges. Badges are based on behavioral. It's gamification of their curriculum, of their education. So you know how when you're playing Candy Crush and you make it to the next level, well, what he's talking about, going to the museum to earn your badge will get you to the next level, or going to the zoo,
or these collection of badges will allow you to go to that next place in your education and
right.
so forth. And
so it's not really about learning anything. It's just about checking it
Collecting,
off, checking it off the little sheet that says, yes, I did this.
And this is all digital, of course, too. These
All
badges
digital.
that we're talking about, they're not like
They're not badges you wear.
Yeah, like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. It's not the things you put on your sash. They're digital. And
Right,
you go
so
into a
he
digital
logs
locker.
into his own dashboard. He logs into his own dashboard on his tablet, and it says, "Oh, have you visited the zoo? Have you gone to the museum?" And once you hit yes, and you have proof of it or whatever, then you
maybe answer
it
a few
goes,
questions.
Bring,
Right.
just like you would get in gamification, where you get the little sound and the light and the little dopamine hit when you get to the next level.
Right.
Same thing with like Facebook or Twitter when someone likes or loves your posts.
Right.
Same thing. Gamification of the educational system.
And now, the other thing that I wanted to mention, and I forget what you were saying now.
Well, so the
it was important too. It had to do with these institutions, and now I can't think of what it is.
we can talk about, the commie versus the Nazi, like
Right. Oh well. Okay. Well, that's
talk
on
about
here
that.
too. But so the wealthy are basically taking back the culture and locking it up for private use.
I
What?
said you could have an opportunity to be a new Renaissance.
Oh, right. Okay. So,
Okay.
The problem is that, we create content for, we're humans. So this is human created content. AI in the future, and I've talked about this before, is going to be making art, right? For consumption, either mass consumption or, whatever. So artificial intelligence is going to be able to start making art. So
Fun.
it's, yay. Yay. And so, once again, see, the wealthy are taking the things that they want.
They're taking
and
the
giving us-
humanities.
right, and they're
Yeah.
taking the culture and the humanities, and they're privatizing it and making it their own. And so the only thing that's going to be left is the AI art. In fact, artists like us are probably going to be out in the cold unless we find ways, like you said, to create a new renaissance and to create this new sort of like underground culture where we're making our own things and shunning the rest. But yeah, good point about the museums and the so people, we keep hearing about people talking about how this is a communist overreach and a communist takeover. And we're like, no, it's fascism. It's not communism. It's fascism. It's another form of totalitarianism. And one of the things that you can point to, aside from the fact that all these people that are behind all this bullshit are just hardcore capitalists, is that if you look at the communist regimes, they took the work from private collections. Whether you like that or not, they took them and put them into institutions that were available to the public. So a good example would be the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, where they have, Russia, which, gained a great deal after World War II because, Nazis went and stole art, and then the Russians took that art from them.
So remember...
And then the Nazis basically... I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, no, what you were just going to say.
Right. So the Nazis, during the whole period where they were coming into power, they would deem art that they didn't like, especially contemporary modernist art that they did not like. They deemed it degenerate, right? And they had the degenerate show. But what they did, they didn't burn it. They didn't get rid of it.
No way.
They sold it. They sold it out on the world market, right? So,
just like the art that is being taken from us, from
Right.
the unwashed masses,
Right.
from the peasant class,
it's now being deaccessioned and sold to the private
Right,
markets.
it's being removed from the public access and being sold on the private auction.
Right.
Just like the Nazis did. That's a Nazi thing.
Right.
Right there. It's taken right out of the Nazi playbook. Communists took the art that was held, at bay from the peasant class and gave it to the peasant class. So let's not, let's please get our terminology.
Right. This is fascism.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're living
very
in
simple.
fascism.
And even the National Review called this thing fascism. So
Right.
yeah.
Even a couple of lefties from the UK call it fascism. I mean, everybody knows that this is fascism, you know.
Right.
So
So
I think it's just Americans don't understand.
we've been propagandized so much
that,
against
yeah.
socialism and communism from the Cold War that, you know, we don't understand these things. So
No, we
it's
don't.
important that, you know, we get these things straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, even to the point of like a local politician is having some sort of event
He's
that's
having
like
an anti-socialism party. It's
party.
like,
it's
Yeah.
fascism, guys, that you're against. It's what's happening is not socialism. I will tell you that
oh
much.
man, you
Yeah.
wish it was socialism, not what we
Exactly.
have right
Yeah.
now.
So, speaking of surprises, or maybe not surprises,
It's the 21st of September, so
Right.
we are looking at
the first day. Well, it's, okay. So also, this is the autumnal edition of Bookmark, and
Okay.
October's next, right?
7 days is going to be the end of September.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, October surprise is around the corner, is what we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to say. And, you know, so personally what you should be doing is you should be gearing up for that. You should have a little money set aside so you can pay your utilities because it's going to get cold. You should have, you know, frozen vegetables in your freezer so that you can thaw them for soups and things like that. Like just some basic health things, you know, basic health stuff. You should be prepared. There's probably not going to be like a food shortage or like a gas shortage. It's not like they're going to suddenly close your local grocery store and you won't be able to buy food during the fall and the winter.
At least we hope not.
But we're looking at I think we're really looking at some kind of October surprise.
Yeah, and games, basically games played on us.
Oh, games played on us.
Yeah.
Total. We've already seen recently what came out the other day was there was a shooting in Rochester, New York. So it feels like the COVID scaremongering isn't quite taking its effect on people as they wanted. So you're not terrified enough. So they gotta, you
Amp it
know,
up
bring
and bring back the
back a couple of shootings.
Right.
You know.
Right. And a police thing that took place in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, of all places,
Oh,
right?
please.
So,
I mean, come on.
Small town America now
yeah.
starts getting this stuff. So
it's so
you know,
stupid.
Julie was thinking, you know, like a lot of this is going to be surrounding, you know, Russia, because the Russia narrative is coming back again.
Right.
You know, and then also, you know, we talk about this in our next video coming up, but we feel that, you know, if there's some fuckery around the election and Biden gets installed, well,
I mean,
it
basically,
depends.
you look up the word election in the dictionary, the word fuckery should be over
Yeah,
it. Like,
right, now.
If you're going to talk elections, then you're talking fuckery. I mean, that's...
So we
They're
feel
one and the
like,
same,
you know,
right?
Biden is probably going to be installed in order to put Harris into place. So
Or Donald Trump will continue the...
yeah, now see, the reason that Trump might continue is because he's being a good boy and
he's doing everything.
doing everything, you know,
The
that
fascists
he's
want.
being told to do.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, it's come out that, you know, he basically supports something called stakeholder capitalism. And now what stakeholder capitalism is it's corporatism, basically, and it's along the lines of what we've been talking about with communitarianism. And what it is it's recognizing that it's not just the investors, not just an anti-capitalist talking about capitalism. It's not just the shareholders that are you know, basically investing in the business in order to get, you know, a return on their investment. Now it's everybody. It's you know, people who are employees, people who are customers, people who are shareholders, people who are the neighbors, and it goes along the lines of what, you know, they refer to as the community within communitarianism. And the community isn't you, me, and our neighbors. It's you know, other things. So
The people who run us.
right, and and so
That's the
what
community.
happens is basically it opens up the company to start investing in other things. So did I write it down here? No, but we are going to talk about this in our green video. We talk about it a little bit in communitarianism and this one coming up, where it's like social investments, basically social impact investments, social investing. And social investing means that they might start investing in green technologies, wind, solar, which, again, on the surface, all this stuff sounds nice. It's like, we're equitable, and we're open to all cultures and races, and we're going to invest in green technology. But again, it's as always the surface level shit that they talk about. It always sounds nice, but what's really going on is something else, completely different. In fact, it's usually the opposite of what they say they're doing. For instance, what we'll be seeing is investment in things like carbon sequestration plants, which are an scientifically unproven technology in order to suck carbon from the atmosphere and put it into the ground and keep it from heating up the planet. So if you believe any of that stuff in the first place, it sounds crazy. If you do believe in it, it still sounds a little dubious, because again, it's not proven. There's no proven. But lots and lots of pension funds, for instance, are moving to SRIs, socially responsible investing, and they're going to be required then to start investing in green technologies like sequestration plants that will then financialize the pensioners. So when we talk about pensions being taken away, or Cory Morningstar starts talking about that, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the conversion of capital that's being held in companies and being distributed to shareholders to then being converted to stakeholders, which is anybody. And along with those stakeholders, they can start requiring that they start investing in SRIs. And then, again, and then it goes on. And they find ways of taking that money out of places that would normally be reserved for your retirement, for instance, and taking it and investing in something else that ends up not working out. But people like Al Gore, who create these funds that are for these particular types of technologies, end up making the money anyway. We didn't use Al Gore's money to pay for that shit. We use the pensioners' money to do it. So
and your taxes.
So these are things that are coming up that we'll be covering in our future videos in the new model series. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime,
yeah, we can talk about the October surprise. Because I think that's where everybody's thinking about the October surprise.
I know I kind of got on a tangent there, but with Trump. But whatever.
And stakeholder capitalism, and green technology, and the looting of the pensions, and investing in garbage, basically. Mm-hmm. Investing in magical thinking, kind of like other things that are being invested in, and using future tax money. Kids' future tax money is going towards like the COVID investments and the COVID shenanigans that you see happening right now.
Right, yeah.
What, you thought that money was just gonna grow on trees? No, your kids are fucked. So all the stuff that we're paying for right now for those businesses to remain open is going to come out of the taxes of the future generation. Well, and our generation as well. All right, October surprise. Russia keeps coming up in the media, which means that Putin is probably going to come up in October. And since his birthday is October, there's always something having to do with Russia and Putin in October. I'll probably be called a Russian agent again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you share his birthday, so why not?
During the 2016 election, I always like to say it. During the 2016 election, I was accused of being a Russian agent because I voted for Jill Stein, who was a Green Party. I don't think that she was even on the ticket in Pennsylvania.
I don't think she was.
Because there were people that I were talking to who live in sort of flyover country in this country, and they were like, I don't know who to vote for, Hillary or Trump. I don't like either. I was like, well, why don't you vote for Jill Stein? And they were like, I don't know who that person is. So that was weird to me. And so people, especially liberals, were calling me a Russian agent for voting for Jill Stein. And then when I said a Russian agent, oh, that's interesting that you would call me that. And then when I announced that my birthday was the same day as Vladimir Putin, then they really called me a Russian agent. So I just decided to go with it. All right, so Russia. So what Putin did is in January, and they talked about this. There was a New Yorker article that came out like days before COVID, like days before COVID. And it's been talked about here and there. But what Vladimir Putin did in January, I think of last year, oh, maybe it was January of this year, but at any rate, he made it so that he would not be, yet again, not be president of Russia. But he wanted to amend the Russian constitution. So this should have been a huge tell to the entire world about your constitutional protections and the value and the legacy of your own constitution in your own country. You know, this should have been a huge tell when somebody this popular is making inroads and being very bold about saying, you know, I want to amend my constitution. And what he wanted to do was make term limits. This is the superficial constitutional amendments that he wanted to make. This is just on the surface, meant for the media to tell you, is, you know, that great guy Vladimir Putin wanted to make the term limits limited, like we have here in the United States, because he keeps getting re-elected. So if you think that Russia has legitimate elections, then you're not really paying attention to really anything, because if you think that the United States doesn't have legitimate elections, then why would you think that Russia does as well? So, you know, everybody's bad. So the point is that he made this amendment to the Constitution in Russia, and he pulled himself out of his position. So in the next election cycle, he's not going to be
running for president,
or even installed. It will be somebody else. But he's put himself in a different position that's much more powerful and much more influential. JP said earlier, kind of like the Russia deep state, you know?
So he's basically installed himself in the Russian deep state, the equivalent of thereof.
Exactly. Yeah. So that means he'll have more power and more influence. So to me, this shift in the Russia power paradigm tells me that probably there's going to be some October thing that comes up
in the American elections,
in the, you know, with Putin and Russia and maybe China and whatever. So something's going to happen in October that will really will really affect our elections. You know, I'm not a psychic or anything like that. I'm not a prophet. I don't know what's going to happen, but it just feels like, because of this whole power move that Putin just played in Russia, that something is going to affect, us in that sense.
And then, this whole thing with the worst candidate that the Democrats could ever put up, Joe Biden has actually, made the cut and is actually like running in the general election.
Right.
That's the biggest joke of all.
Right.
And that, that he's actually, has any sort of traction is even bigger joke.
Right.
And, so we've talked about the whole thing with him and Kamala. We feel like Kamala's basically the one they really want to put in.
Yeah,
place.
Kamala's really the one they want. But as far as October surprise goes, it feels like something is going to happen. I don't necessarily think that there's going to be like a shutting down of like the food supply chain or something really, really tragic that's going to affect your personal life. But I do think that we have to pay attention to what we know. And this is a general humble advice to everybody. When somebody tells you something, try to filter it through what you already know. So like if you have your like I told you, my friend who runs the 2 coffee shops here in Pittsburgh, who was like, yeah, I'm just going to go and upgrade my other store. Well, filter it through what you know. You know that there's been a big lockdown. You know that she hasn't been making any money because she can't have people come inside anymore. And you have to ask yourself, where is she getting the money?
And why is she investing in something where she can't have
And why would you invest in something and do an upgrade in something where you won't be able to have any customers or have any shows or any poetry readings or poetry slams or people getting together and having brunch anymore? Like, why would you invest in that? Why would you give it an upgrade? So filter it through what you know, and what you know is that COVID bucks were issued, and that in order to issue the COVID bucks, they had to follow the protocol and use the special service provider to make it a COVID approved establishment. So when someone says something simple to you, filter it through what you know. So when someone says to you, there's probably going to be an October surprise, then filter it through what you know. And what you know, you should know, but you might not. What you know is that in the Department of Health and in the CDC, every October, they start compiling their statistics for flu deaths.
Oh, I forgot about that.
They start talking about people who die of the flu. They start around October. So what they're going to do, and again, not a prophet, not looking in my little, crystal ball here, in my little 8-ball. I'm just kind of assessing this based on like basic information, So probably what they're going to do is use flu deaths as a way to say that they're COVID deaths, spike the numbers and all this crazy stuff that they've been doing anyway, where,
Or that the flu gives you COVID.
Right. Or that the flu gives you COVID or something like that. And so, long story short, the end of this ramble is that we're probably going to get another lockdown because of that.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be a very severe lockdown. And it's going to be hard because you're going to have to, especially if you're living in a state where we live, which is very cold and very brutal. There are very brutal winters here. It's going to be hard for you. I'm having a hard time, even imagining what that's going to be like for people who aren't paying attention and aren't aware. Our audience is very much aware. Our audience is very much awake, and they're fully prepared and fully expecting an October lockdown.
Yeah.
Why will we get an October lockdown? It's because the CDC and your local departments of health start to compile flu death data or flu data, and so they're gonna alert the governors. They're gonna alert your local municipality, government bodies, whatever, and say lockdown, lockdown, lockdown because the flu is up and all this stuff. So. And then they're going to call the flu COVID and all this crazy stuff. Right. So I would say warn the people who aren't awake, because what happens is when people are once again taken by surprise, they will blame somebody else as opposed to looking towards their fascistic government and their fascistic protocols. They're going to, instead of doing that, they're going to blame you. They're going to blame innocent people. And so if you start having these conversations now, 9 days before October, maybe, you might be able to help somebody realize what is coming around the corner. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we went a little long, and we apologize for that, but we have a lot to say.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Let's see. Next week is October, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll be doing the last September bookmark.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well.
Next week.
All right. Cool. We'll see you in the end of September then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for joining today.
Thanks for joining us.
Please share our videos. Join our YouTube subscriber. Hit subscribe for YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Book of Hours Julie or Book of Hours JP. We're Book of Hours on Facebook. Tell your friends about our new model series. Have them start watching, our videos like Core Tyranny or Communitarianism or even Resilient Cities. It's a short cartoon. Just anything to get the word out there. Please, if you feel like donating, we are working artists. We're working on a couple of projects now. Our new Video essay, our new documentary, will probably be out in the next week or so, maybe the next 10 days. It's called Deconstruction, and what we're doing is breaking down how, your local municipalities are basically run through global operations. So it's global, regional, local, and there's no real federal oversight on anything. So we're kind of explaining that in this next video that we're working on.
Great.
Okay?
Okay. Well, we'll see you next time, and roll the music.
Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.
Book of Hours is determined to remain an essential platform that offers a creative interpretation for lockdown skeptics and experts who have been censored by mainstream press. Thanks to your donations, we can carry on doing this essential work as working artists. These big issues of the day are vital and need to be heard. So please share our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, make a one-time donation on our PayPal page, but most importantly, please be a part of our team on our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/bookofhours and hit the blue button titled Become a Patron. Thank you.